Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Boy, do we have a treat for you today. I've never actually said that. I'm just so excited. That's funny. So before I introduce our guest, here's a quote just for this episode. The things we dislike most in others are the characteristics we like least in ourselves. Carl Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. This is an excerpt from Finding Honor, The Journey to the Truth by the one and only Christine Beckwith, who joins us today to talk about Chapter 8, Reflected Hate, founder of 2020 Vision for Success Coaching. If you haven't listened to Chapter 1 through 7, please listen. Thank you for coming back, Christine.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be back. Love the work we're doing here. Love people that are tuning in to take a deep psychological dive and go on the journey, so to speak. It kind of, is a wonderful place to be where I'm working a lot with this book right now with a lot of people that are trying to figure themselves out. And this is what this book is about. It's about my own personal development journey. It involves obviously Jay. I know we've talked a little bit about the background of the building of the book, but as the story goes, Jay had no clue that I was going to write a book that had any involvement whatsoever to him. I think he was aware I was writing when I was writing this. And ironically, I really didn't want him to know. I didn't want you to know until it was finished and polished. And the editors had said, this is a great book. And I have to give credit to Candy Zelkowski because Candy does an immense job with positioning books for bestseller status. And I am 4 for 5 on that category. Wise Eyes, my first book, of course, was not a bestseller because I was a brand new author. It has won awards. It's won the Los Angeles Book Festival Award in 2018 in the #1 spot of sales books, and that year sold itself into a best-selling category, but it wasn't a hot release type thing. But Finding Honor was #1 on Amazon in the world on October 11th, the day that it released. And when I say that, I mean it outsold well-known authors and people that for the day. So I was like a hero for a day. But I wrote this book because I was always aware that professional development and personal development is what athletes and true heroes and true successful people, when you look at military people that have to go through a boot camp, it's truly the test of mindset and physicality. Can you reshape yourself to the strength that you need to grow into, psychologically speaking, physically speaking? And all of that world has really always been attractive to me because I have been impeded by some psychological illnesses that have tested my ability to survive them. And unfortunately for many humans in this world, the things that I have battled have killed them. And not to make it too dramatic, but my book, Finding Honor, The Journey to the Truth, is about my coming to terms with who I was, what I was, how God created me or how life created me. And then kind of my stumbling down a path in life, between two realms of happiness and hurt, where I would stumble upon you, who I could talk to and who could understand me on an intellectual level, and where that relationship then takes us. And it is a journey. It is and I'm still on the journey, by the way. The book didn't end the journey. The book just told the journey to the point that it stops. There will more than likely will be more journey books written in my mind. But it became a body of work, and this chapter, Reflected Hate, is a discovery point in my personal development where I realized I'm a hypocrite. Which is the beginning of the next paragraph after the quotes you just read. One day it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was a hypocrite. I caught myself, like so many of us will, who have a fair share of self-reflection, loudly putting someone down for gossiping, something I had regularly been doing the same way. And so again, I go on to say, I don't feel good when I talk about other people in a meaningless way. And why am I doing it? That was the more important question. That's the question, by the way, everybody skips. That's the question we innately ignore when we don't want to look in the mirror at ourselves. We never ask ourselves why we do things. We do things, we justify what we do when it's bad. We defend what we do when it's bad because we don't want to admit that we're doing wrong. And because we deny ourselves and defend ourselves, we don't grow or change. And as you know, I submitted myself to receive the changes I felt I needed to change because I was dying as the person I was previously wired as. I had a conscious awareness that I wasn't always doing good or telling the truth or doing the things I was telling other people to do. And for me to really become the teacher at 2020 and build a company that isn't hypocritical, telling other people how to change themselves and do better, I felt like if I don't get this right for myself, I am a fake. But if I get this right for myself, the integrity that will occur in my company and the leadership tone that I will set for others, the vulnerability, the honesty. And so the journey's been amazing. And reflected hate allowed me to stop doing things. And you know what happened when I stopped? On January 1st, 2018, I committed to no longer gossiping. Now I want to tell you, it's now 23, the end of 23. I catch myself every single day wanting to talk about other people with people that are talking about other people. And I have one rule, which I write in the book, which is if I'm not helping or healing myself or other people in the discussion about a person, then there's no purpose in me having hurtful conversation for conjecture, to damn someone else's weaknesses or faults or mistakes or whatever. And so here's what's happened because I committed to not gossiping, and I publicly did so, is people trust me more and I'm more trustworthy. I don't leave a room even when someone's being an asshole or a jerk or a bitch or whatever, and ever talk badly about that person. In fact, if I have conflict that I need to address with an individual, I will go straight to the source, to the person. I have done this religiously for 5 years now. I once had a magazine owner fire me from a magazine because of my affiliation with the AIM. This person disallows my name to be publicized. I wrote for this magazine for 10 years, and this person's ego is so big. They wanted me to denounce the person. They put a scandal story on their cover, and I wouldn't. I stood loyal to that person through that scandal. As a result, I lost my job with that magazine that I wrote for 10 years, which was a hefty price to pay for my loyalty to someone else. There has been at least 6 people that have been interviewed by the magazine. And when asked, who do you attribute your success to? They have named me in the contributions to their career. And he has struck my name from the articles. And those people are aware because when the article gets published, many of them have told me, I just quoted you as helping me. And then the article appears and it's not in the article, and they realize they get cut in the editing process. So I called that guy. I didn't say anything to the people that told me this. I said, oh, that's unfortunate, but I really appreciate that you put me on your list of people that you're accrediting for your success. That's incredible. Now, let's unpack this little example for a minute. Do I feel sad for myself that I have been kind of bullied into an ultimatum, chose what I thought was the integral path? I have continuing deficits and harm done to me as a result of that loyalty, which I have to live with, and not victimize myself and feel sorry for myself that I'm being stripped of some of these accolades by a person, by the way, that in my opinion is broken and not whole. So what do? I called him out. I called him and left a message and said, are you this, and this so badly? and so unself-aware and so broken and so this, that you can't actually allow your editorial that you supposedly do so valiantly to be honest in its depiction of what the person you're interviewing actually says. Because in my opinion, there's a journalistic integrity issue with what you're doing. Number one, I don't care if it looks like I'm defending myself. Hold on, sorry. Charlie, that's Charlie, big sexy. She's deciding to chime in right now. And he literally stood in this conflict with me and said, I won't allow it because you showed the ultimate defiance. And I said, did I show the ultimate defiance? Or did you put a scandal article that you didn't tell me about in a magazine that I was writing in on a day that caused all of us grief? And you then asked for more loyalty to you. You asked us for outward things. You asked us to denounce this person because it was your battle. You want to create a dictatorship, an army. And we said, no. Is it an act that I did, or is it an act that I didn't do that actually caused us to be here? And so I'll end by saying the freedom of being integral in your speak and being honest and not gossiping, for me, has made me more trustworthy, probably has made me more fierce. I think even people like him respect me because I say to him, I won't talk about you. I have a rule. I won't talk about you to other people. So just so you know, when these people tell me these things, I'm not damning you to them. I'm thanking them for writing for me, and I'm addressing my feelings with you directly. And so you can continue to say whatever you're saying. By the way, I ultimately resigned that day from that magazine under pressure. He tells the story like he fired me. And so I made sure in that phone call that I said, stop saying that, or I'm going to publish an article with the truth and my actual email that I still have resigning. But I don't want to do that because it would be embarrassing for the both of us, So I'm saying all of this because reflected hate is about what it takes from you. Like all this stuff that we hate. There was things about my mother I hated, and I do the things she does that I hated, and when I stopped doing them, I didn't dislike them so much with her, and so anybody listening right now, think about the thing that drives you craziest with your spouse, with your employees, with your children, and then ask yourself why. I'm going to come back to this question. Why do you feel that way? Because if you can be honest with that answer, okay, there was a time when I hated people that cheated on their spouses. I admit in Finding Honor, I have had an adulterous affair in my lifetime. I would say the loudest I've ever been against people that were cheaters was when I was cheating myself. And it was because I hated myself for what I was doing at the time. I have since not done that in my relationship I'm currently in. And as a result of that, I'm not looking around the world at cheaters, maybe even as bad people, but maybe people that have a purpose that they're trying to fill and trying to understand why they're doing it. And so I went from this effect where people look like monsters to me. And the funny thing about that is they weren't monsters. I was the monster to myself in my mind, in my eyes' mind. If this makes sense, if this is making any sense.
On page 51, you said, I found myself incredibly embarrassed while at the same time understanding why I received the reactions I had in gossip-filled conversations. In fact, like spinning a Rolodex of good and bad character, I can see in my friends' personalities those who participated deeply in the behavior and those who would listen and choose not to participate, ending the conversation quickly. I bring that up to, what is some of the way, I guess, like in a business context?
Yeah.
Because, we're bridging this gap of people and work and how we labor in ways that create value. What are some of the consequences do you believe on in our everyday lives, maybe not even recognize it, in a business context, that we're undermining maybe our aspirations, our goals, our objectives?
Yeah, you always hear successful people, and I've heard it so much because I'm clearly listening now for this type of speak. Um, don't down your competitor. I mean, this year I have to have seen 10 speakers say this over the course of a year. Don't, because why? Because it's competitive by nature right now in this market, and it looks bad. So when you say, it's kind of even like when you work with people and you talk about other people, what happens is the person that's talking about other people are naturally thought of as a person that's going to talk about other people. And so the person that is being talked to, not the person that's being talked about, will leave that conversation and probably subconsciously be aware that they are not an exception to that type of, situation with the character that's now been displayed by the person that's willing to talk down about other people. And so this is at the root of what this is character. I didn't know that my character lacked, in that I had not been born into and domesticized properly to understand this. We're going to become the people that we are taught to become. And I always thought pedigree, if you will, I kind of denounced it. I hated people that that hate's a strong word. I had a disdain for people that seemed better than other people if they were polished in some way. There was a time when I didn't know how to sit at a fancy table and use all the utensils. At some point in my teenage years, I was very uncomfortable, and I had not been taught by a family that was going to fancy restaurants. So the very first time I had these encounters, and this is like the most rudimentary example I can provide, I felt very awkward. In fact, I wouldn't lift my fork until I observed my girlfriend who was eating next to me, what she was doing. And I just moved in parallel with her, behind her actions. When she picked up this knife, I picked up that knife. When she picked up that spoon, I picked up that spoon. And that's how life was for me. And so somewhere down this road, as a perpetual student, I realized it wasn't classy to talk about people. And it's a poor character trait. And women, I'm sorry, gonna sound biased. By the way, I just was on a women's panel at one of our conventions, and I probably will never get invited back again, because I can't not tell the truth now, because I'm born again in this way from finding honor in the journey that I've gone on. And so I digress, but to finish my point on point with this question, we learn about ourselves, we learn about character. My character is greater today. I am not going to talk behind people's backs. I'm not going to talk behind my clients' backs. Never mind that I have an NDA and you truthfully can work with me and trust that your business secrets are safe with me. That goes without saying, because I'm legally bound. So in many ways, people have handcuffs, and I think even sometimes unsavory speakers can adhere to legal handcuffs. But I think that when you get outside of that and your character is your own, I sit with a lot of women that talk about a lot of women. And it's natural for women. Women are raised to have to compete with other women. Because of the minority, and this is not me being woke or whatever you want to call it, but this is the truth. If there's not a lot of people like you at a table, when you get to that table, women have a sense of entitlement and they turn on other women. And it is an interesting psychology I have witnessed and watched my whole career, and I've tried not to become. But I will tell you, my natural inclination when other women were brought to tables I was at where I was the only woman, I would pick these women apart mentally in my mind. I didn't speak it out loud, but I did. And I wondered how she got to the table. What way did she get here? And here I was, like, denouncing how she got here. I had always gotten to the table on my results. So I was very catty about if this girl was good looking and she slept her way to the table, or she, whatever she did, she was the token, this year's token quota meeting of minority, installation or whatever. And so I'm a really bad example of somebody sitting on a women's panel today, because I got asked a question by the audience at this live conference with hundreds of people in it. What could a guy tell his teenage daughters? And I said, not to accept being on a women's panel. And he said, why not? I said, because as long as we set a kids table for the women, we're going to be sitting at the kids table. I have been
Oh,
a
wow,
minority.
that's a big statement.
Yeah.
What was the
I said, I'm
reception? How was it
here
received?
against my better wishes because I ran big banks and built big banks. And my positioning was 2% in the industry when I was in it. I left when it was 4% women. And the whole time I made no attention to that because my vagina never was part of the interview when I got the job. It was the results that I brought. I was capable, and I was promoted by men and surrounded by men, and I worked for men, and men worked for me, and great men worked for me and with me. And by the way, men get bullied, and men get treated bad, and men go through depression, and men have minority problems as well, because some of them are Jewish, and some of them are Muslim, and some of them are Black, and some of them are Chinese. And so when we start
LGBT.
separating penises and vaginas, and we start bean counting, we create a focus on it in a negative way, and it alienates. So my message to your teenage daughters is to get to work. Don't expect anything to be given to you because you're meeting some quota or you're diminishing your value. Do a great job. If you don't get the job and you sense that it's because of your gender, fight for that. I have fought for pay equality to the point of almost getting fired and won those fights for other women behind me in institutions that I remained employed in for many years after. I have fought the wrongdoing, but I stood quietly. I didn't make a scene. I didn't sue them. I didn't go on social media and bitch. I am sitting on this women's panel because I guess am somebody that is known in this industry for holding high positions, but I didn't get there because I'm a woman. I got there because I was the best choice. And every time you don't put me on the keynote panel, when I have better results than the 5 guys you put up there, or bigger jobs than the 5 guys you put up there, you're doing me a disservice. And I got off the panel, and I was approached by the CEO, and he apologized for putting me on the women's panel. And I said, I would abolish ever doing a women's panel ever again. Let the girls and guys sit together in the whole show. You know, I don't know. Anyways,
First of all, I think, well, it's like so ironic to say maybe you should be on the women's panel if you're saying that, because they need. It sounded like they needed some leadership or pep, inspiration, and
they were looking at me, the other women, and there were big women. The president of NAM was on there with me.
Sounded
like they're.
Wow, what a powerful interaction.
I'll probably never get asked to be on another panel again. But I hope that it was, they gave me a standing ovation in the middle of the panel, the entire audience, men and women. And I was impressed. But I wasn't pandering to the audience. I wasn't. That was my truth. That was my feelings. I had never spoken out loud, let alone with a microphone in front of a live audience.
Do you believe that level? Because I wrote this down in a quote. You said, I can't not tell the truth because I am reborn in this way. Do you think there's a connection to that and this overall chapter, in the sense that the directness of your speech as you have grown, do you think there's a relationship between that panel,
right here,
you speaking your mind, and the directness of your truth? Meaning, as you got less, you see what I'm saying? So, like, let's say you had a problem with that person, instead of talking to other people about it, you went right to them. So you told that person the truth earlier in this conversation. Do you think that's connected to speaking your mind in front of the crowd? There's a connection. You built yourself up
in this chapter on page 52. I write, trust is how all connections should start. I build my initial relationship on trust, forgetting the past, the breaks and hurts from others. I start with trust. Then, only when an individual shows their character is not built on honesty do I lose trust. Easily said, difficult to apply. But what if we are liars? What if we talk about others, gossip, and ridicule people for various reasons? Would you trust others if you are untrustworthy? Would you believe your coworkers were not discussing you behind their backs if, in fact, you constantly talked about others when someone left the room? The answer is no. You will not trust others if your own character is lacking. So conversely, your trust in others will be the supreme character that makes you strong. We hate in others what we hate in ourselves. How about we expect in others what we lack in ourselves? Or we distrust in others what we cannot trust in ourselves. Do you see the pattern? And so I'm saying, like, I was on stage, I was touted as a top woman in the industry, audience was there, and the woman, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to try not to be harmful or hurtful when I say this. The woman that was moderating, who I don't know the person, and I don't think she's necessarily a famous person, and I'm not trying to belittle this person, but she was woke. And her sole purpose of moderating that panel was to talk about minority women, hear me roar. She was up there as, like, a woman on a mission to, like, say to other women, we need to be strong and we need to be this. And I don't relate to that person at all. The whole time she was talking, I was aggravated. I felt like I wanted to get off that panel. I could have run at the time. Like, I sat there for a half hour. The panel was like an hour and a half long. Well, and I was just listening they asked what your greatest accolade or character is. And 3 for 3 for the 3 women sitting to the right of me, they said they were empaths. And when it got to me, I said, I'm results focused. I said, I think with the greatest character I have that makes me successful is I'm not focused on what you're going to tell me. I'm not focused on what you're going to say. I'm not even focused on what you're going to do necessarily. I'm focused on what you're going to get in the end, which is, you can run in place. There's a lot of people working hard right now and not getting results, which tells me they're not doing the right thing, because there are people getting results. I know how they're getting the results. And even though we're telling people to change their activities, they're not doing it. So ultimately, I'm a person that doesn't want to waste my physical time or my words or anything. And so 1, I'm not going to say something I'm not going to do. 2, if I'm talking, you can count on it happening. 3, if I'm doing it, it better be getting results, because I won't do it again if it doesn't get results the first time. And so I just was speaking a different language. And then she went to the next person and they said they were an empath. So there was 5 of us, like, on the stage. And it was like, I was like, in a weird way, I was like sitting there going, like, it's like being on Noah's Ark and you're like the single animal that's sitting there, and you're like, oh, why am I different? But I think, as I say in the end of this chapter, I say, what if you changed and align yourself with the character internally is calling you? What if you rid yourself, as difficult as it may be, of activities and actions, words or thoughts, which are character depleting? What would then be your reflection? I am sure here is where I should add another 10 steps. The truth is, I do not know what those steps are yet. I am not through all of the steps myself. When I took one in January of 2018 with self-awareness, it was horribly shocking to realize how riddled I was with bad actions. So over time, I rid myself of these behaviors, and unexpected consequences revealed itself. Eventually, I saw friends not on the same path, and I weaned them away from me. I believe they were subconsciously aware of my new direction. This is true. My friendships have changed. All of them have changed. In fact, I'm so brutally honest. I think it's hard for some of my friends that have known me, because I probably spent 15 years, 5 years with some people talking a certain speak with them. And now suddenly I call them out on their shit, if there's shit to be called out on. And they think I'm angry or they think that they put it back on me, like, are you having a bad day? And I'm like, nope, I'm not. I'm just speaking honestly, And so they're not ready for my honesty yet. And I can see it.
Well, I'd like to attest that some of always our best, where I always feel so great after, is when we have
Honesty.
untenably honest conversations. We always grow together, and they're not easy. And there's a beauty in that. I just wanted to add to that. But go ahead. I interrupted you.
No, no, no. True intimacy, if you love language, is honesty. If I love you, I'm going to tell you you're saying something right now that hurts me, or you're doing something that's hurting me. I'm giving you an opportunity to fix our relationship in my honesty and directness. If I don't tell you, think of how many relationships decline because one spouse is having an affair and they're omitting that from the relationship, meaning they're secretly having an affair. Okay. I am a person, interestingly, that outed myself. Okay. And I need the world to know that I didn't write about this in the book, but I came forth at the beginning of my affair, that right at the beginning when it began to happen. And I sat with my spouse and said, I'm falling in love with somebody else.
Mm.
I think this is happening because of this. I don't know how I got here,
Wow.
but you need to know it's happening. And did it ruin my relationship? Yes. And so there's an ultimate example of honesty, which you don't want to tell, and that the damages are going to be done. However, here's the difference that a lot of people wouldn't have done. And I did it that way years and years ago, even before I fully became honest. I think it's because I could walk away in that scenario with integrity. Like I already knew I was going to be, the scarlet letter was going to occur. And it did. I had friends that denounced me. We had couples that hung out with us that chose him because he was the victim in the scenario. And I understood it. But I at least could walk out of the room with my head up because he didn't have to hear it from somebody else. He didn't have to ask himself why. He didn't have to internalize. I didn't do more damage to him because he reflected on what he might have done wrong when he hadn't done anything wrong. And so, like, these are strong statements. And listen, it's not easy for me. My ego would have never allowed me to write all the stuff that's in this book about my wrongdoings and my corrections and all this stuff. But this is a book about honesty. It's on the cover, the journey to the truth, and how we get there, is important. So in ending, I'll just say what I was going to say is, I'm sure that my friends found others available for conversations of hate and dismay towards others, because we tend to stick with like people. I cannot wait for my friends. My path led me to a more incredible me. I felt rising self-confidence and genuine love towards myself because my character was vehemently displaying now. I did not realize in gaining this new strength, I would begin to see the character flaws in others. I found myself advising family members, pointing out the need for change as if rehabilitated person sharing the beauty of the other side. And as you might expect, these words fall many times on deaf ears. People will change when they are personally ready to, or when they see fault or find need to change, and not because some guy or gal standing next to them shares a life-altering epiphany. That is just the sad truth in life. So I have moved on, going beyond the place where I left behind friends who could not or would not follow me. Realizing I was healing beyond my peers as I course corrected, I found others whose character was like mine on this end of the road. And this awareness was significant and led to the sad part of my story, because I moved to a place where I simply could no longer live. And despite some folks' desire, continue the relationships, I could no longer maintain these friendships. My mind, my body, and soul would not allow me to give time to those friendships anymore. And thus I physically and mentally moved beyond. And so, of course, those friends may still call and speak. Should I encounter them, I will, but I could not sit in those friendships as I once had. And I simply had to gracefully exit stage left to the new world I lived in, passing in kind gesture and still doing no harm, but not lingering in a place I no longer wish to be. And the evolution of my character willed me to a greater level of friendship in the new friendships I have found. Good.